Hello, and welcome to our lesson on how economies are organized. Today, we're going to explore the different ways societies manage their resources, from ancient traditions to the interconnected global economy we see today. Let's start with a big question. Think about everything around you. Your phone, your clothes, the food you eat. Who organizes our economy to make sure we have all the things we need and want? Who makes sure there are enough doctors, farmers, and engineers? The answer is complex. It's a combination of businesses producing goods, consumers like us making choices, and the government setting rules. Different economic systems organize this intricate dance in very different ways. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to compare the three main types of economies: traditional, command, and market economies. We'll also explain what gross domestic product, or GDP, is, and finally, we will evaluate the importance and effects of globalization. Societies have developed at least three main ways to organize an economy. Let's take a look at each one. First up is the traditional economy. This is the oldest economic system you can find, and it's still in use in parts of Asia, Africa, and South America. In a traditional economy, life is guided by long-standing customs. Jobs are often passed down within the family, and most families are farmers who grow what they consume using traditional methods. Because everything is based on tradition, there's very little economic progress or development. Next, we have the command economy, which is very different. Here, economic efforts are directed toward goals set by a ruler or a ruling group. A classic example is ancient Egypt, where a huge part of the economy was dedicated to building pyramids for the pharaohs. In the last century, communism was a key feature of command economies. In a command economy, the government is in the driver's seat. It decides what goods and services will be produced and sets the prices. The government also determines how things are made and what workers are paid. It often provides essential services like healthcare and education for free. Today, countries like Cuba and North Korea operate with command economies. Our third type is the market economy. Unlike the centralized control of a command economy, a market economy is highly decentralized. It's based on private enterprise, meaning private individuals or groups own the resources and businesses. Economic decisions are driven by market forces, what we commonly know as supply and demand, not by the government. The New York Stock Exchange is a great example of a market where buyers and sellers come together. So, how do market economies work? Businesses produce goods and services based on what consumers demand. What's available in stores depends on what people want to buy. And a person's income is based on their ability to provide something, whether it's their labor or a product that society values. The more society values what you could offer, the higher your income is likely to be. In the real world, however, things are rarely so clear-cut. Most economies are actually mixed economies. They combine elements of command, market, and sometimes even traditional systems. You can think of it as a spectrum. The U.S. economy, for instance, leans heavily toward the market side. Many countries in Europe and Latin America are also market-oriented, but have more government involvement. Meanwhile, countries like China and Russia, despite moving toward a market system, are still closer to the command economy end. Okay, it's time for a quick activity to check your understanding. On the screen, you'll see 3 economic systems and 3 descriptions. Your task is to match the economic system to its core principle. Take a moment to think about it. Let's see how you do. A traditional economy is where decisions are based on long-standing customs. In a command economy, a central authority makes all economic decisions. And in a market economy, decisions are decentralized and based on private enterprise. Great job! Now let's talk about something that's present in every economy: regulations. These are the rules of the game. You might hear the term free market, but in reality, there's no such thing as a completely free market. Markets and government regulations are always intertwined. Regulations set the rules of the game for everyone. Even the most market-oriented economies need laws to protect private property, enforce contracts, prevent fraud, and collect taxes. These rules are essential for a fair and functioning market. What about the other end of the spectrum? Even the most command-oriented economies still have markets for buying and selling. However, the government heavily controls what is produced and what prices are charged. In these heavily regulated economies, you often find underground economies, also known as black markets. These are markets where people buy and sell goods without government approval. So the big question isn't a simple choice between an all-market system or complete government control. The real challenge is finding the right balance between market freedom and government rules to create a healthy and fair economy. All right, let's do another quick activity. Fill in the gaps in the sentences on the screen using the words we've just learned. The sentence reads, all economies have ... that set the rules of the game. The main challenge is to find the right ... between market freedom and government rules. In heavily controlled economies, people often turn to ... to buy and sell goods without government approval. Let's check the answers. All economies have regulations that set the rules of the game. The main challenge is to find the right balance between market freedom and government rules. In heavily controlled economies, people often turn to underground economies to buy and sell goods without government approval. Well done. Now let's shift gears and talk about a major trend that has shaped our modern world: the rise of globalization. So, what exactly is globalization? It's the growing cultural, political, and economic connections among people all over the world. This trend has been driven by several key factors. Improvements in shipping and air cargo have lowered transportation costs. Advances in technology like the internet have made it easier to manage long-distance business. And international agreements between countries have encouraged more trade. To understand globalization better, we need to know how to measure it. Let's define a few key terms. Exports are goods and services produced in one country and sold to others. Imports are goods and services produced abroad and sold domestically. And gross domestic product, or GDP, is the total value of all goods and services produced within a country's economy. One of the key indicators for measuring globalization is the ratio of exports to GDP. This ratio tells us what share of a country's total economic production is sold in other countries. A higher ratio suggests that the country is more integrated into the global economy. Let's look at some data. The ratio of exports to GDP has generally increased in recent decades, showing that globalization is on the rise. Interestingly, smaller economies like Belgium tend to have higher ratios than large economies like the United States. This is because smaller countries need to trade to take full advantage of specialization. Many middle and low-income countries, like Mexico and China, have also seen a surge in globalization. However, globalization isn't without its critics. In recent years, there has been considerable resistance to it. People are concerned about potential job losses in their home countries, a decrease in political control, and growing economic inequality. Major examples of this resistance include the Brexit vote in the United Kingdom and the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Let's pause and think about this for a moment. Based on what we've discussed, what would you say are the main arguments for and against globalization? So, the main arguments in this debate often come down to this. On one hand, supporters argue that globalization can lead to more efficiency, lower prices for consumers, and overall economic growth. On the other hand, opponents worry that it can cause job losses in specific industries and increase economic inequality between the rich and the poor. Let's wrap up what we've learned today. We've compared the three main economic systems: traditional, command, and market economies. We've defined GDP and seen how it helps us measure globalization. And finally, we've evaluated the rise of globalization, including the benefits and the debate surrounding it. Thank you for your attention.